60-minute drive for a 60-minute game. After all the miles we've traveled, we're almost there. After all the hours we've worked, one more can make us legends. After all.
Good morning and welcome to a brand new episode of The Last Word, brought to you by Team MBS Media. Of course, I'm your host, Joe Cardoza, joined by two of the best college football minds across the country, in my opinion, Mr. Brock Vieira and Jeff Barnes. Good morning, guys. How we doing?
Not bad at all. Actually, quite anxious this morning.
Really?
Yeah, well, if you're paying close attention to my Twitter, I still coach high school, so we finished 9-1 in the regular season. Playoff matchups are coming out right about now, so we're anxious to see who we play on. So,
okay, very cool, very cool. How you doing this morning, Brock?
I'm doing good. Just recuperating from an amazing last night of college football all across the country.
Yeah, definitely was a week that did not disappoint. Let's just jump right into it and go to our scoreboard here. Take a look at some of the scores from yesterday. We saw Arkansas, Woo Pig, with 39-36 overtime victory over Florida with those black uniforms. Florida State had me scared for a little bit there, but they woke up, ended up beating Pittsburgh 24-7. Notre Dame, I know Jeff has some thoughts about that, with a 31-23 loss on the road to Clemson. Louisville, 34-3 over Virginia Tech. And then Penn State just opened up a can, which they should have used on Ohio State, but they ended up using it on the University of Maryland and getting that 51-15 win. A couple other good games across the country as well, too. Start with you first, Brock. Some games that caught your attention yesterday.
Yeah, I think I just got to throw it out for the first game on the board, which is Arkansas and Florida. When I first watched the game, I expected it to be a close one. I don't have a lot of faith in the Florida Gators program, but I did not expect Arkansas to jump out to the lead that they did. When Florida came back, I thought that Florida was going to run away with it, and obviously they didn't. It just kind of opens up something that I've been saying for a long time, is that a lot of these coaches don't deserve the positions they are in. Billy Napier was a guy that I had a lot of faith in coming out of Louisiana Lafayette. He's a Nick Saban disciple. He's been under a lot of incredible head coaches. He himself has a lot of great coaching principles, but it's clearly obvious that whatever he's doing down in Gainesville is not working out right now. So there needs to be some serious questions asked of him. And the other game is going to be Nebraska and Michigan State. That's a game that I was following closely for a multitude of reasons, mainly financial. And Nebraska let me down at the end. I did have them in a 5-team parlay. They were my last leg, and unfortunately they did lose. They had two major opportunities to either tie the game or take the lead late in the fourth quarter. They could not get it done. Just calls into question what they're doing in terms of transfer portal. Of course, the quarterback they're having right now was their backup. They brought in Jeff Sims. I think they gave a lot of money to in NIL. Obviously, that hasn't worked out. However, that doesn't mean what's happening in Lincoln isn't a step in the right direction. It just seems to be that the Cornhuskers throughout history in the 2000s, since 2000, has not been able to get out of their own way, and this seems to be the latest edition of that.
And what about you, Jeff? What games caught your attention? I know you want to talk about Notre Dame.
I wasn't, but you know what? I'll do it for Greg. How about that one?
Okay.
Listen, Notre Dame just got their butts kicked yesterday. There's no doubt about it. If you watch that game, Clemson came out to play. They executed early. They jumped out on top of Notre Dame, and they kicked their butts. Notre Dame was not the strongest come-from-behind team. So if you go out there and you do exactly what Clemson did to them yesterday, jump out on them early, build big enough lead, force them to make throws that they're not really great at making, that pick six. It was a great play by Trotter. It wasn't really a horrible throw, little behind the receiver, which put Trotter in a better position to pick it off and go the other way. But nevertheless, listen, they caught him in blitzes. They did everything they needed to do early. And then even later, when Notre Dame came back, they came back out there and got another big score. Notre Dame wasn't able to catch up. If you're the Irish, you do not play well from behind, so you don't play from behind. Well, they decided to play well. They played from behind big early. So they got their butts kicked on the road in Death Valley yesterday. So that's just it for Notre Dame. As far as some of the other games yesterday, listen, I know people were going to be kicking Deion in Colorado for yet another loss yesterday. They're now below 500. But listen, it's an improved program, like we said at the beginning of the year. Didn't expect, national championship run out of this. However, I'll tell you what I was shocked by. The fact that he made the change with the offensive coordinator, that shocked me. Because realistically, offense has been bad this year, but it's more based on their physical limitations than it is on their scheme. I don't always agree with the play calls he's called during these games, especially during this stretch of last 6 games they've had. However, if I was going to make it a move during the season, it would have been on the defensive side of the ball. I had no faith in the coordinator. And if anything, that's where I would have made the move. Granted, Shador is the one who's taking the brunt of the punishment for the offense. But I'm sorry, that defense, you can't keep going out there and giving up the stuff they're giving up and expect to win games. It just wasn't going to happen. You played 2 weeks in a row opponents you were capable of beating, and you couldn't defensively keep them in a range where you could outscore them. That's on your defense. Enough with the Colorado's offense. That's a problem in itself, but that defense, no faith.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brock.
No, I was just saying I completely agree with Jeff Barnes' points. Just want to attach 2 of my quick opinions to what those games. Notre Dame playing a quality opponent on the road means they're going to lose. And I thought that was going to change under Marcus Freeman. It clearly is not the case. What we saw yesterday was that Notre Dame not being able to match the violent aggression that comes with playing the game of football, which is crazy because that's exactly what you expect, especially on the offensive side of football when it comes to those big boys in the trenches. We're talking top 10 grade on Joe Out. We're talking day 2 picks and day 3 picks all across that offensive line. Did not happen. Sam Hartman, as much as I want to criticize his game, he was under a tremendous amount of pressure the entire time for no good reason. Audric Estime had his moments as well, but it's the offensive line that could not get the job done. As much as I want to blame Marcus Freeman, I do because he's the head man in charge. The performance out of both the offensive and defensive coordinators for Notre Dame was absolutely abysmal yesterday. And it almost felt like I was going insane because I saw the same thing happen in the second half. The defense would step up, they'd force a punt, they would get pinned inside their own 10, and the drive would stall over and over and over and over again. And when you cannot generate offense in that way, you do not deserve to be in the national championship picture. You do not deserve to be in the New Year's Six picture. And they need to ask themselves some serious questions about how they want to build their program going forward. Moving on to the Colorado game, Sean Lewis has some questionable play calls. Pat Shurmur's all his play calls are questionable, and that's being nice about it. Okay, why would you ever elevate a guy that has a history like he has with Pat Shurmur? He flamed out in New York. He flamed out in Denver. He flamed out in Cleveland. He got his quarterbacks hurt and absolutely bamboozled, run over, put into the ground over and over and over again in different stops across the country. Matter of fact, if you don't like your quarterback, hire Pat Shurmur. That's exactly what you do. Sean Lewis ain't that great, but he's a lot better than Pat Shurmur, who has failed at multiple levels. Colorado should be where Arizona is right now. And that's why I just wanted to shout out the Arizona Wildcats program. They pulled off another top 25 upset. They beat UCLA by multiple scores last night. It's 2 straight weeks of them beating a top 25 opponent. They only lost to USC by 2 in California in an overtime game. They only lost by 7 to Washington in the game at home. Arizona Wildcats are a program on the rise. If Deion Sanders in Colorado wants to be that program, maybe take a page out of Jeb Fish's book, what he's doing down in Tucson, because that's a program that I'm telling you guys right now is going to be in the national championship conversation in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, to Jeff's point, especially me having lived, I was still living in Colorado, obviously, hearing all the chatter from fans and stuff like that from Boulder. I would say the Sean Lewis move didn't really make a lot of sense to me. I thought if anything was going to happen, I was waiting for at what point is he going to let the defensive coordinator go. I'm sure there's a friendship and a relationship there with Deion in the DC, as there is in all sports. But at the same time, this is a results business, and the results ain't coming from that defense. So you got to make a move. If you're going to be polite and let this guy be your DC all season long so he collects his check for the whole season and then let him go, that's on you. I guess if you got that kind of power with Colorado, no fear of being fired or anything like that, I guess you can do that. But I think the first thing they have to do with this offseason is just get rid of the defensive coordinator, because the word in the street around here from everyone was, why OC and not DC? Everyone was asking that. Gas stations, bars, restaurants around here in Colorado, that was the main question, is why do we have the same defensive coordinator, but our offense has been lighting teams up, but we can't win games because we can't stop anybody. So, I mean, that's a question that he's going to have to answer all this week and moving forward for Colorado. And then before we move on to our first deep dive, a team I've been bashing all season long, along with my Michigan Wolverines, for having a soft schedule, is University of Georgia. I didn't believe in Missouri that they were soft. Proved me wrong yesterday. punched Georgia in the mouth multiple times, and the Dogs were able to come back, win that game, show kind of that championship heart. Impressive W for me for Georgia, and for a team that actually hasn't played anybody all year. Well, they played somebody, and they also showed why they're the defending national champs.
Indeed. Can't wait to deep dive into that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so moving into our first game, we're going to talk a little bit about Ohio State and Rutgers, a game that I thought was going to be an Ohio State blowout, and ended up being in the end, Marvin Harrison Jr. showed you why he's him. But for the longest part of that game, Rutgers was really in that game. I'll start with you, Brock, and get your feelings on this matchup.
Yeah, I'm actually not surprised at the result at all. Ohio State periodically throughout the season has gotten off to slow starts against inferior opponents and then kind of separated themselves in the second half, which is a bit concerning because when they start playing the big boys, well, more importantly, Michigan, that's not going to be able to fly. The same issues that we have had with this Ohio State program for the past couple of years continue to render their head once again. They're not the most physically dominating team in college football. They're a little bit too finesse and not enough power for me. They have had to rely on TreVeyon Henderson time and time again to put in classic performances, which is great, except, that's a recipe just waiting to blow up on itself. You look at the stats. TreVeyon Henderson was their leading rusher, as you expect, but he was also their leading wide receiver. He had 5 receptions for 80 yards, averaging 16 yards per catch, and then obviously had 22 carries for 128 yards at a touchdown. Kyle McCord didn't look that impressive to me. I felt that Greg Schiano's team was going to come out. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to be dominant at the point of attack, and they were going to be fundamentally sound. And that's exactly what they were. The problem is that the Rutgers football team just doesn't have the talent to be able to sustain a 60-minute effort against a team like Ohio State. A team like Michigan is going to be able to do that time and time again. So as much as Ohio State, blew them out in the second half, I think this game was an example and a reasoning behind my outrage and some of the outrage within the college football community why they were ranked as the number 1 team in the nation. Because clearly they're not playing up to that standard right now.
What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I didn't expect this to be a blowout right away. I thought Rutgers would be competitive, and they were. Ohio State this year hasn't come out and really just laid the wood to anybody right away. Their games have been competitive, and they tend to pull away as the game goes along. This offense is not the offense we've seen from Ohio State the past few years, where it's been explosive and coming right out, putting up 24 or 28 points in the first half. That's not who this team is this year. However, what I am seeing is finally a healthy TreVeyon Henderson. And that's a big catalyst for this offense going forward. If you're going to be this offense for a while to get going, the one thing you need to do is keep that other offense off the field. TreVeyon Henderson gives him a chance to do that when he's healthy. Having the ability to kind of spell him with the other backs helps. But he is the dude in this offense, right? We haven't seen the big breakaway runs consistently from him, but we're starting to get to that point again. And that's going to be things that help this team come playoff time. Now, they got to continue to play good defense, which they played yesterday. Great job of keeping Rutgers out of the end zone, holding on the field goals. But you got to do that against the other opponents. We saw them do it against Penn State. Guess what? You have to do it against Michigan, who's a lot more explosive. So Ohio State is showing that, once again, they're rounding into that team. But it's also a little bit of a distraction this week, too. Your coach is too focused on Michigan. You should have been focused on Rutgers this week. Maybe you pull away a little bit sooner in this game.
Good point. Never a good thing to look ahead, for sure. I just thought Rutgers had a couple of chances there to make the game a lot closer than it was. But to Brock's point, the lack of talent and also maybe the lack of being in those kind of games before. When you're not used to those kind of pressure games, all the lights on top of you, mistakes can happen. I think that leads to a good segue to a subject that I know is near and dear to Brock's heart. He gets upset when we can't talk about them weekly. We're talking about the Texas Longhorns in a battle up against the K-State Wildcats. Texas ends up pulling it off and getting the win in overtime. I kind of want to get your thoughts on this game first there, Brock. What do you think about the Longhorns?
Wow. I mean, that
Coach
was
Sark.
almost the ultimate Sark I've ever seen in my entire life. And I've witnessed it, since I've been like 10 years old. I feel like, from his time at, USC as an OC, Washington as a head coach back to USC, and then going all over the country. Yeah, what was that in the second half? I mean, I believe they were up, 27-7 at one point, and then Kansas State got on a drive to come back. Texas turned the ball over twice. That led to 2 immediate Kansas State scores, and then a missed extra point. It was kind of like the saving grace, and then obviously the field goal at the end. The other missed field goal. There were so many opportunities for Kansas State to win the ball game. I'm not exactly mad that they went for it on 4th down overtime. I did think you should have kicked the field goal because you clearly have momentum going your way. You had a backup quarterback in the game, Malik Murphy, who was obviously turnover prone for the Longhorns. But I also get because Jonathan Brooks was back in the game and he was running hard. C.J. Baxter, their freshman backup, had a great game while Brooks was out. But I honestly, as crazy as this sounds, I kind of want to give Texas some credit for pulling this game out because they had all the hallmarks of a traditional Sark meltdown, yet they were somehow still able to pull out the dub. I think that the program, as crazy as it sounds, is going in the right direction. I think the Oklahoma game was kind of a one-off, his annual sarking. They pulled out at Alabama. They pulled it out today. After Bedlam, which you're about to talk about, they're the number 1 team in the Big 10 right now. I'm sorry, the Big 12 right now. And their college football playoff, outlook just took a dramatic turn for the better. It was just mind-boggling what I witnessed. And the fact they were still able to pull it out after doing something that we saw over the past 2 years against Oklahoma during the first year. Against Texas Tech last year, I believe, 2 years ago, or whatever the game. All these games, and yet they're still able to pull it out. It's kind of a credit to the team. I do want to say A.D. Mitchell has putting his name on the map. Yeah, everyone is coming in. Xavier Worthy speed. Xavier Worthy speed is a difference. No, A.D. Mitchell is the dude. That dude gets open and his catches. His hands are solid. Loved him coming out of Georgia. Now he's in an offense in which he has a quarterback to actually, throw the ball in front of him. So I think that A.D. Mitchell is the guy that we're all going to have to focus on going forward, as he could be a potential top 10 pick in the 2024 NFL draft.
What about you, Jeff, when it comes to Texas and Kansas State? And what about that last call by Kansas State as well? You're the resident OC.
Listen, I'm beyond the point with some of these play calls. There's a better chance of plays working when it's something that you do consistently, right? If I'm in a position, I have one play to score, I'm going to go with a play that I've run consistently that I know is one of my best plays.
Thank you.
I am not going to run something that I'm pulling out of a bag it has to be one of those situations where I know it's the perfect setup. I'm watching the defense. I'm seeing it where if I call it, I know it's going to work. But I can't do these plays where they come up there and we've been practicing this play all week. Have you run it in a game? Has it worked in a game? Has it worked in a situation when you needed it? If no, then I'm throwing that bad boy back in the bag for another time, right? One of the reasons why, if you ever watch the West Coast offense, everybody runs sprint right option is because it works. Okay, it's been working for 40 years. Okay, no matter who the play caller is, everybody runs sprint right option because it works. Okay, to get down there in a situation in overtime and say we're not going to tie, we're going to go for the win. It is my best play. I'm going out with my best. I'm not going out with something that's just one of the tricks out of the bag. I hate that situation.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. Let's handle what we can do. We can try a play we've never ran before. I want to get your opinion too, Brock, because for me, if it's me, I would have gone for the tie unless you have that play that there's no doubt Texas can stop this play. It's unstoppable. But if I don't have that play in my playbook or we haven't practiced it before, to Jeff's point, then I'm going for the tie. What was your take on them going for the win?
They have way too much confidence in Will Howard. I believe it was Leo at 5 wide on that last play. And your offensive line clearly was not holding up enough for Will Howard to get a good look outside of his first read. Secondly, even if he had a clear first read, there's a possibility Will Howard sells it. Even though they were 3 yards away from the end zone, Will Howard is not him. I don't understand why the Kansas State coaching staff continues to believe that. And once again, it goes back to the play calling. You expect a team like Kansas State, a coach like Chris Klieman, who's been in those environments before, who has won at multiple levels. Obviously, they won the Big 12 last year, and then Klieman has a bunch of national championships from North Dakota State. To be able to call something that, like Jess said, is more in line with their offensive philosophy and what they typically run. I guess sometimes the moment is just a little too big for some people, but Kansas State lost that game more than Texas won it. But at the same time, like, Texas doesn't win those games at all. So again, a credit to them and that defense for stepping up when they needed to, get the job done. They brought the heat, they brought the pressure, and they did everything right.
Yeah, no doubt. Definitely was an exciting game. Had me on the edge of my seat, and it shows me that the Big 12, when they want to, they know what the word defense means sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes.
only when it counts.
There you go. Speaking of playing defense when it counts, before we take our break, let's do our one last deep dive. Let's talk about Bedlam. And it should be, according to what we've seen with realignment, the last Bedlam we'll see for quite a while, where we saw the Oklahoma State Cowboys beat the Oklahoma Sooners 27-24. Man, this game had everything. Controversial call at the end, a lot of excitement throughout the game. Of course, you got the rivalry that's been going on forever. You even had the pettiness at the end, which I was in line for, when you had the We'll Never Ever Get Back Together song playing at the end of the game throughout the stadium. We'll start with you, Jeff. What was your take on what could be the last Bedlam we see for a while?
Credit to Oklahoma State for bringing the fight to Oklahoma. Oklahoma had everything to lose today. So you think they would have been ultra inspired in this matchup to keep their college football playoffs alive? Didn't happen. Okay, they came out here in an emotionally charged environment. Yes, Oklahoma State knows this is the last time they're going to see their in-state rival. I hate when realignment that this goes away. You could be the ADs can keep this going. Let's be realistic. This is money, okay? So they can actually keep this going if they wanted to. So it's not like you have that many SEC games that you can't keep this game alive. So when I watched this game, I just saw an Oklahoma team that wasn't on top of their game. And granted, they only lost by 3, but you had plenty of opportunities to take control of this game, and they gave them away. So, Brent Venables, I think what you're seeing is the reverse Lincoln Riley, right? We saw Lincoln Riley go to USC. His offense looks fine. His defense is struggling. Here in Oklahoma, his offense isn't exactly helping his defense out too much. They're leaving him on the field way too long. And in this situation, if they would have gotten more points in certain situations, they're leaving with a win here. So I think right now it's the kind of reverse situation. The defense is still playing pretty strong. Yeah, it kind of broke in the end, but when you're on the field a lot, that's going to happen. So I think what you want to see from Oklahoma going into next season, because pretty much your playoff season shots are done. You're probably playing in a New Year's Six bowl, unless you lose another game. So you're going to be pretty much playing the Super Bowl. Let's do another game. This is where you're looking next year. We got to find a way to be more explosive on offense. We got to find a way to generate more big plays on offense, be a lot more consistent driving the field, not relying on just a couple of shot plays here and there. They got to be a lot more explosive offensively to be able to go out there and put together the kind of season that they're able to put on that defense, because they have a really good defense, but they're not scoring against the better opponents enough to put people away.
Yeah, I think what he needs to do is kind of do what Deion Sanders needs to do. Deion needs to find a guy that can run the defense and just kind of be hands-off. He needs to find somebody who's a really good offensive mind, who's thinking like modern-day football, that can run that side of the ball, and he can keep on having his hands on the defensive side of the ball. And I think Oklahoma would be fine. And a big body receiver would help them as well. We shouldn't be relying on guys that are 5'10", 5'11", coaches' sons to make game-winning plays. Got to get somebody that can run a slant, that can take a go route to the house. And Oklahoma needs to be a little bit more explosive for sure. Wow, we flew through those first 3 games, man. You are watching The Last Word on Team MBS Media. We are not done. Much more to discuss. We'll be right back after this commercial.
Enjoy 40% off site-wide. Vitable takes the guesswork out of feeling good. Get your own personalized daily vitamin pack safely delivered to your doorstep every month. Take their online quiz to find out which vitamins and minerals can support your personal needs based on your own diet and lifestyle. Hashtag only what you need, nothing that you don't. All vitamins are manufactured in Australia at the highest quality standard. Ingredients come in the best form for their absorption by your body. Enjoy 40% off site-wide using code NBS40 at checkout. You are watching The Last Word with Team NBS Media. And now back to Joe, Jeff, and Brock.
Welcome back to The Last Word, presented to you by Team NBS Media. Joe Cardoza, Brock Vieira, and Jeff Barnes here. 3 games down, 2 games to go, guys. Let's just jump right into one of the ones that I thought was going to be the game of the day, and it did not disappoint, but unfortunately, an injury kind of made it have a damper to the ending, and that was the LSU-Alabama game, as LSU went on the road to Tuscaloosa, ended up leaving with a 42-28 loss. Jalen Monroe, a guy who I think was much maligned throughout the whole season. He can't throw. He can't even run right. Get him out of there. He's not a real quarterback. In my opinion, still a long way to go on the throwing side, but that young man had a coming out party. One of the biggest stages he's probably ever played. You're playing at home. You're playing against an LSU team that's really been good this season after getting that early season loss. To get refocused, remember, in and out of the lineup, Nick Saban trying different things at quarterback. You take this opportunity and make the most of it. I was really, really impressed with his performance. And something I've been talking about a lot on social media the last couple of weeks is Alabama's defense just keeps on getting better as the season goes on, and I think you really saw that yesterday as well. We'll start with you first, Brock. What was your thoughts on Alabama LSU?
I think Jalen Monroe as a passer has dramatically improved over the year. A lot of people were really criticizing him after the Texas game, and I thought that was a bit of an over-exaggeration. There's multiple reasons why that offense didn't perform up to standard in the Texas game, and even so, they still had multiple explosive plays over that Longhorns defense. Since then, obviously, we know about the USF game. That was something that Jeff Barnes saw in person. But after that, they've been flying kind of ever since once it got over Ole Miss and really started to get into SEC play. I thought that this was a standout game for Alabama. This was the really last major question mark when it comes to this regular season schedule. Of course, they still have some very difficult games. They play Kentucky next week. They still have Auburn on the schedule. But they haven't guaranteed it, but they pretty much guaranteed themselves a spot in the SEC title game. If they go into there while winning out the rest of the season, they're 1 win over Georgia, a team I think they can beat from going back to the college football playoff. And I think right now that stock in terms of Alabama's chances of winning a national championship should be sky high after a performance like this. There's so many times throughout this game where Alabama could have folded. LSU looked like they were knocking on the door of taking the lead and really establishing themselves as being a better team. And guess what happened? Alabama shut that down time and time again. They went into halftime. They make those second half adjustments, and the game wasn't even close. Jaden Daniels, he's got to stop. Like, part of it's, his offense, but part of it's him. He looked like that's the closest I think I've ever seen of somebody getting just absolutely murdered on the football field. Holy macaroni. And we've seen it time and time again. We've seen the Florida State game. We've seen it in some of the SEC games. He thinks that he's literally built out of like Teflon or metal or steel or whatever, and he'll just run at the middle into 2 big defensive tackles and just get conked time and time again. And I have some major concerns about that guy's health. It's not smart to do what he's doing. LSU has some major deficiencies on both sides of the ball, as we saw, especially on the defensive side. They don't really have any of those major playmakers besides Harold Perkins that we're typically used to. And even on the offensive side of the ball, like, it just wasn't standard. It would be kind of interesting to see if LSU was able to retain Keyshawn Butte, how much different they could have looked this year. But this LSU team, I hope Tiger fans are ready, because this is the Brian Kelly experience. You're going to win 9 games a year, no doubt. But the games you're going to lose are the big games. You're going to constantly lose to Ole Miss. You're going to constantly lose to Alabama. If you guys go and play Tennessee, you're going to lose to Tennessee. You're going to lose to Georgia. That's just how it's going to be with Brian Kelly, and this is the latest example of that.
Mr. Barnes.
Well, I think this is the best we've seen this offense look, and they needed this. You had to come out this week and score points, not only match LSU, but exceed their production. Jalen Milroe didn't exactly light it up in the air, but he was effective. Then you go around and add what he did on the ground. So to go out there and be the leading rusher, still throw the ball effectively, score 4 touchdowns, that is an elite performance. A Vince Young-like performance back in his days at Texas. So that was big. And it also sets the stage for when they do eventually meet Georgia. Because Georgia this year is not exactly lighting it up offensively, but they're a tough defense. So for him to come out there and put this kind of performance on film, so when they do meet Georgia, and for Georgia to have to see that we got to not only play the Bama running game tough, but we still got to be effective at stopping their passing game, because this kid can be a true dual threat problem. Now you're giving Georgia something to really game plan for. Early in the season, it was take away the Bama running game, make them throw the football. Now it's take away the Bama running game, but you still better defend the passing game, because he's starting to put those pieces together. He didn't throw for touchdowns yesterday because he ran for all 4 of them. So people are going to say, oh, he didn't throw for even touchdowns. The passing game was effective, but he was also their leading rusher, 20 carries. Okay? So he was also their leading rusher and effective at doing that. You can discard the passing touchdowns because they put them on the ground. So you're talking about a combined 400 yards of offense almost from one player. So that is something that you're going to have to look for when you talk about the matchup with Georgia down the road. But it was a big matchup they needed yesterday. It allowed their defense to get key stops. And listen, LSU we knew was defensively challenged. So this was going to be a score fest. When they couldn't keep up with Bama, you knew it was over. So at this point, credit to Bama. Right? They did the job yesterday. Right? You went out there and you beat the team in your conference that gives you the most problems because of their prolific offense. You know that you're going to score some points, but for you to go out there and put together this kind of performance with the quarterback that people didn't have faith in, now people are going to look at this offense a lot different.
And talking about growth, I see growth, man, talking in the way he talks about Milroe, because after that one game Alabama had, he was like, get him out of there. He is not a quarterback. He's not ready for SEC play. He'll never reach that level. So for Brock to give him credit and say that he's seen growth, I got to give respect for the growth from you as well, because we can be hard on these guys. And sometimes they improve. Sometimes they get even worse. Like I said, I had no faith in Missouri. They definitely put me on notice yesterday. That's a tough team there. Another game I want to talk about was like talk about a shootout and talk about lack of defense. It was a Pac-12 matchup as we saw the Washington Huskies defeat the USC Trojans 52-42. Dylan Johnson, 256 yards rushing, 4 downs for him. Penix versus Williams, the matchup of quarterbacks. I mean, there were so many ooh and ah plays there. If you were a guy who's into the NFL like these two gentlemen, there had to be at least 8 to 9 plays that had you jaw dropping or standing up and hitting rewind on the remote to watch it again, because this game had a little bit of everything in it. We'll start with you, Jeff. What thoughts on this Pac matchup?
Well, for once, it was nice to see Michael Penix not have to carry the load for Washington, right? We talk about it all season long. He's the reason why he's one of the Heisman leaders, because he's carrying this team. Yesterday, he didn't have to carry it. He did his part, but there was a guy behind him that did a lot of work yesterday and made the load a lot lighter for him. And that's something you finally want to see when it comes to winning this Pac-12 title. All right, you had to beat USC. You had to beat Utah, which you did. You still got to beat Washington State, all right? Excuse me. So there's still more runway for these guys, but overall, Washington is finally looking like the class of the Pac-12. Now, don't go to big head and go out and lose next week, but what you got to do is continue to put this kind of performance together. Let Michael Penix be Michael Penix. Get somebody else to help make the load a little bit lighter. make it easier on your defense because your defense goes through great moments, right? It was good against Oregon. Right, had some big breaks this week because Caleb Williams didn't make it easy. All right, so
not at all.
Yeah. And listen, we talk about USC's defense being bad, but Caleb Williams didn't make it easy. He did everything he could to keep USC in this game, and you got to give him credit for that, right? Is a former Heisman winner trying to get back there, trying to get his team back. It's just too much Washington in this case. Like I said, Michael Penix had a good game, but listen, that performance out of the running back, it's hard to stop when you have a quarterback and a running back playing that well.
Yeah, I mean, 3 touchdowns in the first half. Come on, man. What's your take on this matchup, Brock?
The only thing Caleb Williams did wrong was that he didn't transfer to Alabama this offseason or last offseason. What I saw for that USC lost the game more than Washington won it, in my opinion. There was multiple critical plays that I think would have turned the tide in that game. One was the multiple first downs given up by Dillon Johnson, by the USC defense when Dillon Johnson had the ball. And that didn't come down to talent. They came down to scheme and fundamental football. They all came down because of broken assignments. That's exactly what it is. And as Alex Grinch's defense is not a fundamentally sound defense. We can criticize the players all we want, but it's the same problem we've known for a long time. Grinch does not put together fundamentally sound defenses. If someone knew the word contain, USC would have won this game. The next part would have been the screenplay for the fourth quarter that went for a touchdown for USC that got called back for Colvin. It was Colvin. Don't get me wrong. There's no controversy on that. But after that, Caleb Williams got sacked on 4th down. So instead of even kicking the game-time field goal to make it 45-45, Washington got the ball back up 45-42, and obviously they scored a touchdown, and that was all she wrote. And there was also some other things that occurred in that game. I know how crazy this is going to sound. Despite the fact they gave up 52 points, the USC defense stepped up. And I know that's, again, it sounds moronic, but there were some points in there where they created the possession change that I thought was going to shift the game, because I thought that USC was going to score and they were going to be able to take that into the second, to victory.
Okay.
Obviously, interception, the tip interception was a big one. There was a couple of stops that they got here and there. I didn't expect them to get too many stops. I was hoping that they would hold to field goals a couple possessions. But there were some times where, for a defense that is arguably the worst defense in the country, they did some things against a Washington offense that is the most potent offense in the country in Washington. They're like, okay, maybe USC has a chance. But you can only ask them so much, especially for what they got, for USC's offense not to deliver. It was a really tough game to watch. It was really hard to watch Caleb Williams after the game. That was a tough scene. And again, what I really hate is the hate that this kid gets. What does he do? He prepares well, he plays well, and he puts his heart on the line. That's exactly what you can ask of any player. He left nothing. He left everything on the field. And to criticize the guy for showing emotion, it just is very irritating. And for all those people that say, remember when he wrote "lol" when Max Duggan was crying? He didn't write "lol" because he was crying. He wrote "lol" because people rallied around Max Duggan when he was emotional while they were criticizing Caleb Williams. I know there's multiple reasons why. And I don't think we really need to get into it this morning, but we know why. It's really just really tough to see, because this is a player that deserves a lot more than what he's getting from both his coaching staff, his fellow players, and from the media and fans in general.
I think too, if you're Caleb Williams too, I think there's a question you have to ask yourself. I mean, obviously I think the NFL has enough tape on you. I mean, I think last night probably solidified your position if it wasn't solidified already. If it's me, I'm thinking I finish out the season, and then depending on what the bowl game is, if it's not a major bowl game, I might just be sitting out and getting myself prepared for the NFL draft. Because, I mean, USC, like Oklahoma, the season's kind of done as far as like playoffs and things of that nature. The question is, can you make a major bowl? And what do you consider to be a major bowl? So I think if I'm Caleb Williams, I don't want to let my teammates down or myself down. I'm going to finish the season out. But I think when it comes to postseason play, I'm probably going to tell those guys, hey, thanks, but no thanks. Go ahead, Jeff.
I know why the hate is there. And it's unfortunately in today's society, what happens? We love you when you're winning to a point. Right?
Yep.
After a while, we begin to hate that you're winning, right? We got to find a reason to hate you. Well, Now they hate him because he's an emotional kid and he didn't win, right? So, why are you crying over a loss? Because it matters. There are NFL players that cry over losses. There were basketball champions that cry over losses.
Yeah.
Okay? Just because you never saw Michael Jordan cry didn't mean he didn't. Okay? Right? He was probably doing a lot of stuff when they actually lost the series that you never saw.
Yeah.
So, I've seen Charles Barkley cry on the court after getting swept out of the playoffs. Does that mean Charles Barkley deserved to be hated? No. All right. So athletes are who they are, right? It's a very emotional game when you're out there, you give everything you got for 4 quarters. You come up on the short end, you're either pissed off, you're either exhausted, or in some cases, you're just at the point where you just have to let it all out emotionally. Okay? Yeah, whether it's some guys punch a wall, some guys cry. It is what it is. Okay? People are going to react to it on the other side of it, especially in the Twitter world now, the X, whatever you want to call it, who love to talk about every little thing. Okay? Well, that's what it is now. So he's going to get the hate because people can go on any platform from their phone, from their laptop, whatever it is, and vent about what they think about him. Right? The fact of the matter is the kid is in a situation that most people aren't in. They will never be in. And it doesn't matter what they think on their little keyboards.
Yeah, and Jeff, you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, a lot of people that have opinions on Twitter have never played sports at any level, so they don't understand. I don't know what this is, but they don't understand what it means to pour your heart into something and not have the results come out how you would have desired.
Yeah.
What is going to be the major question for me is obviously there's a 99% chance of going to the NFL. The problem is right now the Bears own that pick. As much as, go get your money because I guarantee 40, 45 million, if the boosters at USC are also putting up million and the coaching staff has a clear plan of how to address these issues, it might not be in his, worst interest to return to college. The Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer. This is a guy that's going to come in with that as a minimum expectation. Do you really want to put yourself in the same position that you are at right now at USC in the pros where you're going against athletes that will literally take your head off? I don't really know if going to the Chicago Bears right now is in the best interest of him, both as a professional, in terms of health, in terms of just career prospects, and even financial gain. It's going to be really interesting to see how he handles these next couple of games. And quite frankly, I don't think he's going to sell out the bowl game. I think no matter what, I think he's going to play. I think he's going to do exactly what Bryce Young did because that's the kind of guy he is. And when you, from an NFL GM perspective, when you see how he plays, how he throws, and how he reacts, and how much he cares, it checks off every box of why you love a kid. Michael Irvin, I think, said it best when he would first get into the pros, where he would lose and be devastated, and one of his teams would come up to him and it's like, "Hey, buddy, cash still checks. Like the check still cashes on Tuesday." Like you don't want a player that only plays for the money. Caleb Williams clearly is not that guy. So it's going to be really interesting to see again how he handles the rest of the season. But I don't think he's going to sit out any games. I'm not even 100% sure. I'm 99% sure. I'm not even 100% sure he goes to the NFL. And quite frankly, he has been let down more than he has let down. So I just the hate that he gets is completely undeserved.
Ooh, nice question here from Press Row Sports asking us what our thoughts are on the Wisconsin Badgers and their new head coach, Luke Fickell. Lost yesterday for Wisconsin. Who wants to take that?
I'll start that one out. Yeah, listen, I think Luke Fickell is going to be fine. We know the Wisconsin program was down when he got there. It hasn't been an elite program in a while. Okay, and that brand of football that Wisconsin's known for is not in vogue anymore, right? It was that grinded out, the big uglies, running the ball. You didn't have to have the greatest quarterback back there because you had this dominating running game and a good defense that got you through the Big Ten. Well, those days are over. We see what Ohio State is. We see what Michigan is. We see what Penn State is. Those are the standards. And now he's trying to bring that because he was that at Cincinnati. He was able to go out there, get the mid recruits, make them into elite stars because he coached them up for 2 to 3 years. Well, now he's got to do the same thing in Wisconsin. So I think this year is going to be the year where you start to see the pieces that he has. Who are the guys he wants to keep for next year, the guys he's recruiting and bringing in, whether it's being a portal, whether it's being straight out of high school. And then next year, we're going to start to see the more Luke Fickell team. I think it's going to be a 2 to 3 year process for Luke Fickell before this team becomes a real problem in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think that right now what you're trying to do is trying to get players who don't fit your puzzle, and the pieces don't fit. I mean, he's has the guys that have been there before already, and a couple of freshmen he brought in, but he's not going to run Wisconsin's offense, traditional offense, for 1 year just to appease the fan base. I think he's like, this is my offense that I've run my whole career. It's been effective. We're going to run it with the players that we have, and we're seeing the results, which aren't that good. But I think that after a couple of years of being able to get recruits and get the people he wants in, like Jeff said, you'll start to see him play his brand of football. And the Wisconsin fans who might be down on him right now won't be down on him in a couple of years. I mean, Brock brought up at the beginning of the show, you take a look at what Arizona's doing. It takes you a while to get your type of players to play the brand of football that you want to play. And that first year or two, when you're stuck with the roster you inherited, you get some bad football and you get some moments to make the fan base and boosters not like you very much.
And you got to look at what he had, right? But, he cast off Graham Mertz. Florida ain't loving Graham Mertz right now. So it shows you a lot of the guys he pushed out of the program into the portal were guys that weren't going to make a difference for him. And he's starting to get an understanding of the guys he has. Tough loss to Indiana yesterday. Indiana's a tough out. They don't go lightly. So in conference games that are roughest, Minnesota found that out yesterday with their loss. Right? So you got to bear with some of these teams that are right now trying to put it all together. Like I said, 2 to 3 years is the time frame for him in Wisconsin.
Your favorite topic, Mr. Vieira, coaches. What are you thinking about Wisconsin so far?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to fire Luke Fickell after barely one season. I'm having to turn over an entire Wisconsin Badgers program. But there are some things that have been red flags for me throughout the season for this Wisconsin Badgers team. Obviously, the quarterback situation was one. We thought Tanner Mordecai was going to be him. That was clearly not the case. Braden Locke, has had stellar performances at points, but he's still coming along. I get it. It's a process. I get it. You lost Chaz Malusi, and your offense hasn't been the same because you no longer have that 1-2 punch with Braden Allen. But does it hurt you to go under center like once? Throughout the game, I thought that when Luke Fickell was going to come in, he was going to bring in his own brand of football, but he was going to combine it with the fundamentals that has made Wisconsin football great for so long. People always want to talk about defensive schemes. Oh, are you a 4-3 team? Are you a 3-4 team? Or offense scheme? Are you a spread team? Are you a power? Oh, football is like MMA now. Before you would have specialized disciplines, kickboxing, Muay Thai, jiu-jitsu, whatever. Now MMA fighters do a little bit of everything. That's what college offenses and football and defenses are. They do a little bit of everything. Well, we're not seeing that key portion of being under center from Wisconsin, getting that power offense going. I think that's really harming this Badgers team. You look at their schedule, and Indiana is not a tough out, but they're an out. There's no reason to lose to Indiana. Indiana's other wins on the season are against Indiana State, who I didn't even know had a football team. I thought they only had a basketball team. And the only reason I knew they have a basketball team is because Larry Bird.
Yeah.
Right? And then Akron, who's one of the worst teams of all of FBS football, who can barely put up a win a season, was the only other win that Indiana had, who they only beat by 2 in overtime. You look at the schedule this season, they went to Washington State and they lost by 9 points. And at that, it was like, oh, okay, Washington State's a team on the come up. Well, I didn't get a chance to see the Washington State-Stanford game, so I don't know if they won or lost last night. But before that, Washington State had 4 straight losses. And a lot of those losses were bad losses. So that loss gets even worse. And then you look at the fact they lost 15-6 to Iowa, an Iowa team that couldn't put up more than 10 points yesterday against Northwestern at Wrigley Field. I think somebody put a black and white kind of filter over it, and it legitimately felt like an old-timey game. Like I was watching film from 1907. It was incredible. And you lost to them by 2 possessions. An Illinois team that is not that good this year, even though they did beat Minnesota yesterday. They only won by 4. They lost by double digits to Ohio State. They lost by 6 to Indiana. It's just there's a lot more to be desired with this Wisconsin team. I think Luke Fickell and his staff need to go into this offseason and really start to implement some of those old features of Wisconsin football into the new version of it. My dad had this saying, which was old school ideals with new school technology. That's exactly what they need to do. They need to put old school ideals of being able to run the football, being able to play from under center at points, and put it together with a new school technology of the spread offense, analytics, things of that nature. I think if they do that, Wisconsin Badgers is going to be in a much better state next year. There's again, Luke Fickell has a lot of work to do. Some major question marks because you're not playing American defenses anymore. This is the Big Ten, and you need to be able to run the Big Ten. And to be able to run, you need runners that go north and south, not east and west. So that's a big thing that I want them to fix. And keep in mind, Illinois last year had a very successful season with the Italian stallion Tommy DeVito playing under center with Chase Brown in that backfield and a very strong defense. So that old Wisconsin brand of Power O is definitely maybe out of style, but it's not ineffective. It's still get the job done. They went to a Rose Bowl against Justin Herbert in 2019 running that same brand of football. So as well as Jack Cohn at quarterback. Jack, big lanky Cohn. So like
I remember that.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
a generational running back.
Yeah, exactly. You had Jonathan Taylor. Definitely helps out. But they have those talents. They have Braden Allen. They have Chad Malusi. They will continue to get those guys. When they're running east and west, they're like, I don't know where to go. Like if they're right, let me line up right behind the center. I'm gonna get the handoff, and then I'm gonna be able to see the block develop from the moment the ball is snapped. That's how you have an effective running game. So those are some things I want to see improve those concepts. Fickle's a long way to go, but I still believe he is the right man for this job.
Well, I'm going to put a respect on Indiana's name because you just remember last weekend, Penn State had to claw past them because it wasn't easy. Same thing with Louisville. Louisville only beat them by 7. Okay, Rutgers, who's 8-3, I think it is right now.
Yeah, I think so. Right.
Rutgers was in a dogfight with them until they were able to pull away late, 31-14. So Indiana's not an easy out. They've gotten better as the season's going along. So this was the in-conference matchup. Unfortunately, you don't play your best ball, you can get got. They got.
But you don't get got when you play when you grind out wins. You know what I'm saying? Like when you are physically dominant for 60 minutes, like Indiana's not gonna have the juice to squeeze out a dub.
Yeah, for sure.
And not an easy out, but they're an out unless you're Wisconsin. And shout out to Pinello, who I know was sulking after yesterday's loss.
Well, we come to the part of the show where you two guys get to talk about a team or a player, in your opinion, that made a statement in yesterday's action. Like we talked about, it's been some great games yesterday. I think it's probably top 3 best weeks so far of the season. So let's go ahead and get to that segment, the statement. Things off this week.
I lost you, Joe.
So who wants to kick things off this week for the statement?
I started. For me, I'm going to keep it right here in the Tampa area. I'm going to say, for my statement, I'm going to keep it with South Florida. Okay, here's a team that was dreadful the past 2 seasons under Jeff Scott. Got him fired within 2 seasons of being a head coach coming out of Clemson. All right. First year, Coach Gorge comes in, and you're already 4-5. You've got this quarterback, Byron Bynum, who's come in, and his first couple of starts, it looked like, well, this kid can't throw the ball. They can't get the offense going. This is going to struggle. He's turned it around, okay? And they seem to have a lot of things going in the right direction here in South Florida. It's a good job by head coach coming in, realizing what he's got, recruiting better, starting to understand that if I want to have the facilities and all the things that all the big schools want, make this into that kind of program, I got to do the groundwork. He's putting through the collectives to try and get NIL going at USF. He's doing a lot of the right things to build this program up. Kudos to him. It's starting to show on the field. It's showing off the field. They got their new off-campus stadium getting ready to be built. They've got their on-campus practice facility is covered now, so they won't have to worry about running inside every time there's lightning here in the Tampa area, the lightning capital of the world. So, listen, I'm liking the things I'm seeing from the USF. over this past season so far. I can't wait to see where it goes next year when he has another year under his belt, another year recruiting, and a little year of results to build on.
Mr. Vieira.
If you guys know anything about me, I love college football, but I especially love Group of 5 football. That's because that's the brand of football I grew up in. Now, in the G5, there have been a lot of teams that have had spectacular performances this year, kind of capped off with the undefeated performances of Liberty and James Madison. Now, obviously, James Madison is ineligible for a bowl game, and the conference, which is absolutely stupid. And, Liberty, Jamie Chadwell, we knew what we were going to get. A team on the West Coast that has been silently having themselves a phenomenal season is Fresno State Bulldogs. Last night, they pulled off a 37-30 win at home against Boise State, really setting themselves up for a New Year's Six bowl appearance. Right now, they sit at 8-1. Their only loss was against Wyoming on the road, a very tough place to play. And even Texas Tech lost up in Laramie, just to kind of put that into example. And right now, to figure out the season, they play a tough game against San Jose State, but a beatable, a game that they can win. They play New Mexico at home, which they should win, and then they play San Diego State in San Diego, a team that is absolutely awful. Should that happen, they're going to be entering the Mountain West Championship game at an 11-1 record. A win there, and they should be playing a New Year's Six bowl game. What Jeff Tedford has done since he's come back to this Fresno State program is absolutely incredible. Now, don't get me wrong, he didn't come back to a terrible program. Kalen DeBoer left the Bulldogs in a phenomenal state when he took the job up in Washington. But still, Tedford had to make sure that things are still going on correctly. They haven't got there. They had phenomenal success last year with Jake Hayner. They went to the LA Bowl. They won the Mountain West Championship. They beat Washington State convincingly in the Los Angeles Bowl. And I think that they can finally punch through that ceiling that they've wanted to for so long. In the late 2000s, when Group of 5 teams were all making, BCS bowl games, NY6 bowl games, but Boise State was going all the time. Hawaii went to the Sugar Bowl. TCU was going. Utah was going. Even Nevada was close that one year. Fresno State always felt like they should have been those guys, whether that be under David or Derek Carr, whether why or why not. They always felt like they should have been there. For the most part, they should have, but they've always had that one hiccup. I think this is the year that they finally put together. They finally get to that New Year's Six bowl game. They let the country get a chance to see them for being the powerhouse that they are. The only reason why Fresno State isn't the best team in the state of California is because they play in Fresno. They're limited by geography, and that's it. Now, the geography is kind of awful. I'm not going to lie. Like, I was in Fresno one time because my girlfriend's younger brother lives in Clovis, which is the city next over, and we're going to his birthday party. We took a wrong turn down the road. We ended up in like this weird kind of agricultural country area that had sheep and chickens and other life. and as we kept going on this road, do you know where I ended up? Right behind Fresno State University's football stadium. I am not kidding. Their literal stadium is surrounded by livestock. That's the only reason. That's the only reason why Fresno State is not a national brand. But they play incredible football. They play fundamentally sound football. They put dudes in the league year after year, and it's about time that people start giving Fresno State the respect that they deserve.
Nothing like seeing a wild chicken fly across the field in the middle of a football game, man.
It was crazy. It was chickens, and I looked up, and then it was the list of Fresno State's conference championships, like up in the press boxes. It was the most bizarre sight of all time. But hey, I'm sure there's a lot of livestock in Tuscaloosa, and people still watch Alabama football.
That is true.
We need to start watching Fresno State football as soon as possible.
I guess if you go from one California area to the other, Fresno State, you get the country. And then if you go to UCLA and USC, it's...
There you go.
Yeah, but guess what? Guess who plays the more tougher brand of football?
Ooh.
I could believe it.
Yeah, me too.
Some people listen to gangster rap. Some people, gangster it out. That's all I'm going to say. Like, some people think they're them, and then some people are them, and Fresno State is them.
I mean, like I always say, I think that the West Coast plays a soft brand of football anyway. I'm an SEC, Big Ten, 5 yards in a cloud of dust, play action pass kind of guy, and tough defense. And I'll say it until I see differently. I think that the West Coast teams always gets punched in the mouth because they don't play that brand of football over there. They try and they want to, but most of the teams over there cannot. For a whole season, they couldn't last in the Big Ten. They couldn't last in the SEC. And we'll find out with the realignment. Maybe I'm wrong.
But that was always the rap on the Pac-12 up until those 2000s USC teams, right? Those Pete Carroll USC teams. They were the finesse brand of football. So, yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different now, I think, overall, because so many teams are spread. Most teams are finesse, right? Most teams are zone running teams. They run a lot of zone read. They run a lot of bubble. They run a lot of the spread traditional stuff, which is stretch the field, make teams defend the 53 yards, as opposed to the traditional offense, which was keep moving forward, pound the ball forward, right? So I think that's what we're looking at now is, yes, the game has evolved. They make you cover all blades of grass. However, there's still a way to move bodies off the line of scrimmage. We've gotten so entrenched into zone blocking, which is all combination. Old school football was man on man, big on big, move a body. And we don't see that as much now with the kind of zone blocking we see.
Yeah, and before we wrap up, we definitely want to make sure we don't miss anybody. We had another question that came in from Press Row Sports just asking us how good are the Oregon State Beavers, especially coming off that victory against Colorado yesterday. For me, I think they're an okay mid-tier team in the Pac-12. I think that it's good to see DJ get out of Clemson and show that it wasn't him. It might have been more Debo and his coaching staff more than it was DJ. DJ wasn't totally clean. Mistakes were made, bad reads, things of that nature, but he's definitely shown he's a capable quarterback. But I think in terms of the hierarchy of the Pac-12, that they're a mid-tier team. What about you guys?
Yeah, that's about an accurate, description. They were an ascending lower to mid-tier team without DJ last year. Okay, so they got better at the quarterback position. They added a couple more players in the transfer portal that helped them out. They're a better team than they were the past couple of seasons. However, they're not the class of the Pac-12. So they're a good team. They're going to make a nice bowl game, and DJ will go out of Oregon State a better quarterback than he was seen as his last couple of years at Clemson. I think what you've seen with Clemson's offense, it wasn't all DJ Uiagalelei. So I just, unfortunately, you want to see Oregon State sustain this when you do lose said quarterback, because it's time for him to move on. So what's the plan after he's gone is the question.
What about you, Brock? What's your take on Oregon State?
I feel they're a very underrated football program. They have only 2 losses on the year by a combined 6 points. A 3-point loss at Washington State and a 3-point loss at Arizona. They're undefeated at home. Now, they're going to have 2 big tests coming up. They play Washington and Oregon to end the season. So that's going to give us a much clearer picture of what this Oregon State Beavers program is actually at. But a couple things, don't go the other way. And this is a completely different story for Oregon State. We're going to be talking about national championship picture for them. I don't think they're a national championship squad. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying that, they could be deeper in that conversation had a kick gone left or right for them. They beat Utah at home. Obviously, Utah isn't good offensively, but they play a really stout defense. The Martinez kid at running back is really, really underrated throughout the country because he gets those tough yards time and time again. I'm a big fan of what Jonathan Smith is doing up at Oregon State. They smoked Florida last year in the Las Vegas Bowl. They beat Oregon in the Civil War. They're going to have an opportunity to do that again, even though they play up in Eugene, which is never an easy place to win. I think that Oregon State is one of those programs that we don't pay enough attention to because they haven't been good consistently, but they've been consistently good in terms of they always seem to have a above 500 record. They produce really good NFL players and they produce guys that are not going to be top picks, but they're going to come in day 3 UDFAs and be solid players in the league. I still remember when Dennis Erickson and then beat Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl in 2001 and stuff like that, behind Ocho Cinco and all. I think Husmanzado was on that team too. Yep. So they've had some talent. And the only thing that I think is holding them back is the fact that they play Corvallis, Oregon, and Corvallis is not a place that attracts big names. But the players that they do get, they make the most out of them, and I think that they're going to be one of the major beneficiaries of this new college football realignment. You're going to see a team that's going to have a kind of a cupcake schedule, and before you know it, they're going to be 12-0 at the end of the year, as we move forward.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Well, man, another great show. And don't worry, I know people probably wondering, this is a college football show. No talk about the sign stealing allegations. Once everything gets cleared up, we'll definitely make that a big majority of our show. From what I've been reading and hearing, maybe we'll have some movement on that this week, or the investigation will continue. Who knows? But we definitely want to thank you guys for your support. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. I'm Joe Cardoza, Jeff Barnes, Brock Vieira, and you've been watching The Last Word on Team MBS Media, and we'll catch you guys next week.